One day I walked into a conference of Deliverance just to attend, and I said these words, which I never realized that I had an issue with a demonic force in my life. I was a Christian for years, felt great, everything was wonderful, and something happened that day that totally took me by surprise. So the question really is, can you be a Christian and have a demon? And the answer is, well, why don't I just share with you what happened? So what happened at the time was that I said this Bible verse as a prayer. Search me, O Lord, and know my heart. Touch me and know my thoughts. Point out anything to me that offends you. And lead me to the path of everlasting life. Didn't think anything of it, was just Psalm 139, verse 23 and 24, went into the conference building, sat on the chair, and out of nowhere, all of a sudden, there is the most evilest yellow eyes looking right through my eyes out. It totally threw me. I was shocked. I'm like, what is that? It freaked me out, and now I knew I was a problem. I wanted to run to the leaders. I wanted them to pray for me. But I also was this pride, me, Barbara Marshall, dealing with an issue like this. But instead, I sat quietly, listened to the whole conference, took notes, took everything in. And all I could think of was, how do I get rid of that? What was it? And where did it go? It was that quick. That was it. That was it. So that first day of the conference, I just went home and tried to pray with the Lord and say, hey, Lord, what am I dealing with? I started to sit quiet in my chair. Now, if you really know there is a problem and you're sitting quietly like that, what do you think will happen? Well, that happened to me, of course. The doorbell rang, the grandkids ran in, the dog was barking, the phone rang, and people like me get distracted so easy with all that kind of stuff. So nothing happened that day. I went back to the conference the next day and learned a ton, wrote again notes, and held on to that. And then I came home, and again, I sat quietly in that chair on a time nobody was supposed to show up, and it happened again, all these distractions. So that evening, I went deliberately back to that chair and I said, that's it, I'm closing the door, and I don't care what distractions are gonna happen, but I'm going to deal with this. And I started asking God, what is going on? And instantly came this thought of a person, an ex-boyfriend of my daughter's, that was not the most nicest person. And the thoughts that came in of like, oh, this is what has happened. I need to forgive this person. Maybe I buried it. And I forgave it and I thought it was gone. But the issue and the problem did not leave. It still stayed there. And it was so frustrating because you know there's a problem and you don't know how to fix it. And then I prayed again. And after I prayed again, I asked God, what is the problem? But I had to get quiet. I had to go from my mind to my heart and started to listen open-minded. And all of a sudden, there was this flashback that showed me what the problem was. So I remember my daughter and her boyfriend at the time having a huge argument and a big fight, and it got pretty ugly at night. It kept everybody up, and it was nasty. There was crying, there was screaming, there was all kinds of stuff that was going on. And I remember the next day that when I felt frustrated about the whole situation, I saw somebody come to church that usually never went to church and holding her hand. And I remember inside the church at that moment when my daughter's hand was grabbed, that is when the anger inside of me got so intense and big, because I could see the manipulation, I could see the fixing, I could see the struggle of what was happening, and I could see that this happened right in a church and it was used against my daughter. And it ticked me off. Now, as a good Christian, I was silenced. I screamed in silence. I didn't yell. I didn't share. I didn't go to the person. I screamed in the perfect Christianese silence without anybody knowing it, being a good Christian. Well, guess what? When something gets held inside and a judgment and resentment starts, right or wrong, when that stays inside through that many years, it allows unforgiveness to come in, resentment, anger, and even to the point of hatred. It was buried. I did not even know it. And it had sat there for many, many, many years. Now, I was a Christian, but a Christian, can they be demonized, right? Can they be demonized? But this thing was real. I saw it and I knew it. Now I'm in a conference years later. I see those yellow eyes shine right through me. I know it's not of God. And I cry out to God. I said, God, this has got to go. I forgive that moment. I will let that go. And I hand that problem over to you. I trust you with it. Just like that, gone. Just like that. And there are moments in our lives that we don't know how to handle situations. We don't even know it's there. So I want to challenge you today. If you could ask yourself this verse that I prayed. Search me, O Lord, and know my heart. Touch me and know my thoughts. Point out anything to me that stands in the way and lead me to the path of everlasting life. And when you give the Lord permission to expose in your life something that's been buried or that is a problem, it can be changed immediately. Now, often people look at the demonic world and all these parts of it as scary, don't want to touch it, don't do it in my house, don't help those people and all that. But so often it has to do with the authority that we have and the identity in Jesus Christ of who we are. It starts all the way in Genesis 1. Verse 26, I believe. We rule over the earth. So we have a choice who to follow. Number one, how big is a demon? If you really think about it, it's as big as you make that demon. Because Jesus says we have conquered them and rule over them. So I'd like you to see a demon as a germ. And a germ can leave. A germ has to go. And the more you start trusting God and the more you start saying, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and greater is He that is in me than he that is in the world, and you start believing it, is when everything changes. Now, sometimes this is easier said than done, you think, but it's actually easier done than said almost. So it's completely opposite. There is so many people that we work with, especially in the prison system, that are holding on to so many problems and so many issues, that have all these past generations making the same mistake over and over and over again. And their life and their children's life and their grandchildren's life is set up for drugs, addiction, resentment, racism, alcohol, fear, depression, anger, and the list goes on. And you might be there right now yourself as well. But I have good news for you. It says in Isaiah 61, I came to set the captives free. And that includes you. I want to give you an example. Yesterday, I worked with one of my champions. And as I worked with her, I asked her, which doors are you struggling with right now? Fear, sexual immorality, occult, anger. Which doors are open that are not Jesus's door? And it turned out all doors were open. And I asked her, which door would you like to close first? And she looked at me and she said, I like to close fear first. So instead of just closing the door of fear that moment, we dug a little deeper. And I asked her, what kind of fear are you dealing with? And she says, well, my abusive friend wants me to move back in with him, and he's not going to accept no. I'm not sure if my children's father lets me see my child again when I get out. And I'm so afraid I have to come back here because I will not make it on my own. And as we looked at her life and we looked at the fear, I asked her some questions. I said, how long has this been going on? Did your mother have this problem? Did your grandmother have this problem? And she said, yes, yes, and yes. I said, so we're dealing with a bigger issue actually than just the one thing you're talking about right now. But to simplify it, why don't we just start with one of them? Fear that your boyfriend forces you to move back in with you. First of all, he's not the right boyfriend. And I like you to practice saying no right now. And as we talked, and as insignificant and simple as this looks to the rest of us, it meant the world to her. And she said, I break off the lie that I have to move back in with the abusive boyfriend. And then we came up with a plan and asked Jesus for an exchange. And we said, Jesus, can you give her an exchange? And all of a sudden she looked me in the eyes, as simple as that was. And she says, Barbara, I'm at such peace right now. And the fear had broken off of that one small component, just like that. It was so easy for her. Then we started on the next one. And we worked through that again. And by the time, in only 24 minutes, she had broken off the lies. She had stepped in truth and started seeing that she was greater with him that was in her, Jesus Christ, as he that was in the world. And that is what Jesus wants to give to you today. Because when you go out into the world with fear, negativity and everything else that will come with that, and the consuming thoughts of what can go wrong, it will, because you've set yourself up for failure. But when you set yourself up for success, God will turn it around. I was demonized as a Christian, but because of the authority that I have in Jesus Christ, I could tell it, go, you will no longer mess with me. And it stopped it right there, and it's gone, completely gone. The result? Happier, fully free, and nothing buried. And that, my friend, is what God wants for you. We would love to pray with you. We'd love for you to get Jesus Christ. It's as simple as saying, Jesus, come into my life. I need you. Help me, because you are greater than anything out there in the world. I believe you died for my sins and rose from the dead after you died on the cross. And I admit that I've made mistakes. Will you help me? And help me to see what I need to change. So I encourage you to look at Psalm 139, which is written all about you, especially verse 23 and 24. And I encourage you to say that prayer, search me, O Lord. Because God has such great plans for you. If you want to talk to us, we'd love to connect. 855-515-5550, or go to our website, barbtv.org. God loves you, and he wants to help you.